On? Ooh, okay. I apparently had it on for like the first song of worship, which was not what I'm supposed to have it on, but it seems to be working now. Good morning, River City Church. As Jared said, my name is Melissa. If you don't know me, I'm just a member of River City Church, and I'm always honored and excited to share with you guys on a Sunday. So we're in the middle of a series called Kingdom Dynamics. Last week, Jared shared on mission and the kingdom dynamic of mission, and we were lucky enough to have two members of Overland Missions here with us in that service. We watched the video, and some of us who stayed after were able to kind of hear from them and what that looked like in their life. And this morning, we are continuing this series, and we're going to be talking about worship. So Wednesday, as Tim said, was Ash Wednesday, also Valentine's Day, which is a very weird mix of days together. I love you, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, let's eat some chocolate. If you gave up chocolate for Lent, I'm sorry. Bad timing. Okay, but I want to talk for just a second about Lent. I know Tim went over a bunch of it, but last time I spoke with you guys, I shared a pretty embarrassing story, and I'm not going to do that again. I think that one will last you for a little while, but I do think it is important for us to be vulnerable with each other. And lest we forget, we all fall short of the glory of God. I do want to share with you a humbling and admittedly petty vice that God has clearly called me to give up for Lent. And that is Facebook Marketplace. Not Facebook. No, not Facebook. Facebook is fine, but Facebook Marketplace. There's like two of you in here who know that the struggle is real. I wish that Melissa was in here because I could look at her, and Melissa Downey. It is like the greatest thrift store in the world. It is open 24 hours a day. You can go in your pajamas, though lots of people go to the real thrift store in their pajamas too. I am not one of them. I'm hooked. I am absolutely hooked. It's like the possibility of finding a treasure, right? Something so old, so unique, and so ugly that nobody but me could possibly appreciate it, and it is only $45, and I only have to drive to Mandarin to get it. But seriously, it is something that has taken up a little bit too much of my energy and time. I feel like there are those. I don't really do social media. I don't really care at all about it. I know some of you guys are like Instagramming, or what kids do, the TikTok these days. If you're like, 40 and older, you guys do your Wordle. I don't care about any of that at all. I am on the marketplace, and I am in my happy place. But I am giving it up for Lent. I do know that there are a few of you in here who have been the recipient. Like, I always find these things that either I can't afford, or I don't have space for, or just wouldn't really fit with my life stage, and so there's people that I just randomly send. Like, no message, just a Facebook link, and that's it. You will not be getting one of those. I'll start the group text after Lent. Anyways, I felt I need to share that, because actually Lent, I was surprised to find out as I was really preparing for this talk how much the idea of Lent and laying something down and self-sacrifice ties into this week's topic of worship, of kingdom dynamics. And I felt, I knew immediately when I talked to Jared, and he talked to me about speaking, what God was calling me to speak on. And admittedly, I was a little bit hesitant. I was like, are you sure, God? There's a lot of stuff in the Bible. We could talk about lots of stuff about worship, but is this really what you want to speak on? And I feel like this morning was such confirmation that this is what he wants to speak on this morning, because during the time that we were doing pre-service prayer, someone came up and they had a word, and they were like, listen, I have a word, and it's from the book of Job. And they went and read this thing, and they're like, nothing good comes from the book of Job. But this morning I figured, what better place to dig into worship but the book of Job, right? Amen. And then Lauren, wherever she is, where did she go? You pretty much gave my whole talk. So that was it. If you have trouble following along with what I'm saying this morning, it's everything that Lauren said. So I feel confirmation that this is where we're supposed to be this morning. Okay, so we're going to start in Job. I'm going to jump around a little bit just because I know you guys do not want me to sit up here and read all 42 chapters of the book of Job. And so in the beginning, where we're going to start, basically the first few verses are just paraphrasing about who Job is. It's setting up that he is a good, upstanding guy. He's very wealthy. It says he's got a whole bunch of camels, a whole lot of ox, he's got some sheep, he's got donkeys, tons of servants, and a bunch of kids. And we're basically just kind of establishing that this is Job. And then we pick up in verse 6, which is where we're going, and we kind of have a inside view, almost like a rear window view of this very odd interaction. And we're going to pick it up here. So we know who Job is, and then it just goes right into this interaction. And it said, one day the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord. And Satan also came with them. The Lord asked Satan, where have you come from? From roaming through the earth, Satan answered him, and walking around in it. Then the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? No one else on earth is like him. He is a man of perfect integrity who fears God and turns away evil. Then Satan answered the Lord, does Job fear God for nothing? Haven't you placed a hedge around him, his household, and everything he owns? You have blessed the work of his hands, and his possessions have increased in the land. But stretch out your hand and strike everything he owns, and he will surely curse you to your face. Okay. So Job, good guy, very rich. Says he's got about 3,000 camels, and I do not know the modern equivalent to 3,000 camels, but I think it is a lot of camels. He's a pretty good guy, and we can see that he has it pretty good. But Satan accuses Job of only being blameless and upright because of the things that God has given him, the blessings that he has given him. But he says, if you take those away, he will curse you to your face. This man does not know hardship if he stepped in it. And by the end of this interaction, Satan is actually granted access to all that Job has. And he does not waste a moment before just destroying all of it, wiping it away. And when we come back, it says, as Job, he's just kind of enjoying his day, and a messenger comes to him. And he says, Job, almost there, not quite yet. He says, Job, the oxen and the donkeys, they're gone. They've absolutely been slaughtered, wiped away, and all your servants are gone too, and I'm the only one that has escaped to tell you about it. And when this messenger is still talking, another messenger comes, and he said, there's been a great fire, and all the sheep have burned up, and all of the servants that were with the sheep, all the shepherds, they're gone, and I'm the only one who has survived to tell you about it. And when he's speaking, another messenger comes and says, the camels and the donkeys, they've been raided, they're absolutely gone, and I am the only one left. I'm the only one who escaped here to tell you about it. And this is where we're going to pick back up in verse 18. And while this messenger was still talking, it says, he was still speaking when another messenger came and reported, your sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in their oldest brother's house, and suddenly a powerful wind swept in from the desert and struck the four corners of the house. It collapsed on the young people so that they all died, and I alone have escaped to tell you. Then Job stood up, tore his robe, shaved his head. He fell to the ground and worshiped, saying, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will leave this life. The Lord gives, and the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Throughout all of this, Job did not sin or blame God for anything. When I think of worship, I think of what we did this morning, coming together as a church, corporate worship, lifting up our reverence and our praise to God. And that is very certainly part of our worship, the kingdom dynamics of worship in a church, our corporate worship. And worship this morning was so powerful and so good. Thank you, guys. But the worship that I want us to focus on this morning is a different kind of worship. It is an intimate, personal relationship between us and our God. because I do like to sometimes dip my toes into a little bit of Bible nerdery, I was looking up what the original kind of term, Greek Hebrew term for worship in this passage was. And admittedly, I was surprised to find that the definition was different than what I was expecting it to be. In this passage and really much of the Bible, this one word is used 172 times in the Old Testament, and other words very similar are used in the New Testament. It actually means to bow down. It is a bowing down, or like the physical act of laying down, or being prostrate in front of someone or something in which you want to honor. And that really comes from, in the term that it's used, it's come from a lot of different things. It's not just bowing down before God, but in the Old Testament, it's used when people bow down before, maybe like a king or a queen, idols, or even the golden calf. It's used in that way too, or before other people. And, excuse me, I have a little thing. It proceeds in the Bible kind of grouped with an offering. It was tradition that if you were going to kind of come before somebody or something like an idol, you wanted to present a gift for them. And so you'd bow down and you'd present a gift. I think we're all kind of familiar with the story of the 3 wise men coming to Jesus. They came to Jesus, they bowed down before him, and they presented gifts to him. And so in this passage, this is sort of what we're looking at. In the Old Testament, when this one term of worship is used, it means a little bit like that. So we have Job. Job has absolutely lost, everything. Living out within one afternoon our worst nightmares, our worst fears. Maybe worse than our worst nightmares and our worst fears. And in his response, he bows down in worship. I feel like it's often in moments of just kind of tragedy when everything really hits the fan and it's like this 1 minute and then everything is changed, that maybe we have these moments of clarity in life. We have a moment of sort of like the preciousness of our life, the shortness of our life, the true importance of what is actually important in our life. And I feel like Job is kind of having one of these moments. He has absolutely lost all of it. It is all gone. And he acknowledges that he wasn't going to take it with him anyways. But I feel like we would do such a disservice if we talked about Job's worship without first looking at Job's grief. And Job grieves. He grieves loud. He grieves hard. He grieves publicly. He tore his robe. He shaved his head. He threw himself down on the ground in the dust. And I feel, church, and I'm just going to I don't think that this is for every church. I'm talking about a big C church. Is in our Western church culture, we have lost grief. We have elbowed it out because it does not look pretty. The Jewish tradition then, and still now they hold it, there's actually a period, a 12-month period, which is held for bereavement, different stages of what you do through those 12 months. And I think one that maybe we, as Gentiles, I'm going to group you guys in Gentiles with me, are kind of most familiar with is Shiva. And it actually means 7. It's a sitting after a burial or a death where your family, your community, people you love, probably people you wish weren't there, come and they just sit with you for 7 days. And actually, I'm not going to read it, but in Job, this is actually what happens. His friends come and they just sit with him for 7 days. But sometimes we, the collective we just want to skip the grief and we want to go right to the worship, right? It's like, it's okay. Everything has just completely fall apart. My life is crazy. It's terrible, but God is good, so let's go worship, right? But I want to tell you, and it's here, not just that I want to tell you, that grief and worship, they are not mutually exclusive. They can coexist. And I just think we don't have to pretend that they can't. We are created in God's image. And as beings, we reflect his complexity that can hold space for many things at once. Grief and worship, joy and sorrow, passion and stoicism, and it is not a sin. It said Job did not sin. It is in our nature. Much as it is in the nature of God to be a loving God, but a God of wrath, a God of justice, and a God of unending mercy. I'm going to read to you guys a poem, actually, from one of my favorite poets. Her name is Mary Oliver, and I think it really captures a little bit of this tension and this dichotomy really well. The name of the poem is "The Poet Compares Human Nature to the Ocean from Which We Came." For purposes today, I think we can kind of think instead of the word ocean or sea, we'll just put in God, from where we came. Okay. The sea can do craziness. It can do smooth. It can lie down like silk breathing. It can toss havoc shoreward. It can give gifts or withhold all. It can rise, ebb, froth like an incoming frenzy of fountains, or it can sweet talk entirely, as I can too. And so, no doubt, can you, and you, and God, and Job. Job's life is admittedly now full of despair. It is overflowing with heart-wrenching sadness. And what he does with that is he bows down before God. Psalms 51:17. My sacrifice, O God, is a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart. You, God, will not despise. It is a worthy gift to offer. In the beginning, we saw that Satan proposed that Job's love for God was merely transactional, bought and paid for by the good things that God had given him. He says, take it away. I'll curse you to your face. And I feel like that's exactly the kind of thing that Satan would say. But that's not what Job did. Instead, he fell on his face. And he said, blessed be the Lord. When Job has nothing, absolutely nothing left to give, he gives himself. His heart broken and contrite. It's easier said than done, church. It is all good and well to read it in the Bible. It's all good and well for me to stand up here and say it. But it is hard to put in practice. Again, we can hold both of those things together. And it is not as black and white for Job, as Satan takes everything away, but he worships God anyways. So we should too. There are 42 chapters in the book of Job, and we have scratched the surface of chapter 1 and 2. The surface. The rest of the book is it really is like a playbook of the highs and lows of life. Job is a stew of emotions. He is all over the place. And I mean, he is a hot mess. Let's be honest. And again, I'm not going to read all 42 chapters, but what happens next is after this, Satan feels like, oh, maybe that wasn't enough. Let's go ahead and get Job's body. So he gets the bodily afflictions, right? All the boils. He's not looking good. And Job, he's going up and down, people. He curses the day he was born. Curses it, said it would be better if he wasn't born. He has no hope left to live. And his wife looks at him and says, oh, you're right. You should just die. Just curse God and die. Do what Satan wanted you to do anyways. His friends who come to sit with him after their 7 days are like, listen, you must have been doing something really bad that we didn't know about for this to happen to you. So why don't you just come clean, confess it, and this will all be over, right? They accuse him of some pretty intense things. And he proclaims his innocent, but in the same breath he asks, how can any man truly be innocent in front of God? He says he hates his life. God must hate his life. God must be laughing at him from above. Then also he lifts up God, defending him to his friends, who he calls miserable comforters, and they are. I mean, that's what he calls them. You're miserable comforters. But more than anything, repeatedly, he asks God, why? Why, God? What did I do to deserve this? Why is this happening? Why has this tragedy befallen me? I'm a good man. Church, if this is not a modern or a biblical example of modern day deconstruction, I don't know what is. Job sitting around with his friends, hashing it out. God, why? Here's the deal, though. Job, he leaves room for the reconstruction. So the book of Job in the Bible, it's often grouped, or kind of in like the studying of the Bible, with the book of Proverbs and Ecclesiastes. These are known as the wisdom books. And the book of Proverbs basically is like, what you do matters. Honor God. Do good. Make wise decisions. Ecclesiastes, on the other hand, is like, nothing matters. Absolutely nothing matters. Sometimes everything matters, but mostly nothing matters. So love your life, love your wife, and love God. And the book of Job, it poses the question, do I matter? Do you matter? And why, if there is a God who is good and who is just, is there so much suffering in this world? And this is the answer that Job demands from God. And God shows up. He shows up in a whirlwind. He does not show up with a clipboard in his hand or a pencil behind his ears to tick off all of Job's questions and give him an acceptable answer. That's not what God does. Man, it would be so easy if that's what he did. But instead, God shows up and he says, Job, stand up because I have some questions for you. And the rest of it goes through this God who takes almost like this tour de force of the creation of the universe and all of the forces that hold it together. He asks, when the foundations of the earth were laid, who set the dimensions of it? Job, surely you must know. Who set the water and the seas, shoring up its boundaries? Who made a way for the thunderbolt and the rain so that the grass could grow in the desert place? Who can number the clouds? Have you, Job, even once in your life commanded the morning sun to rise? Have you provided the prey for the raven? Is it on your wisdom that the hawks soar? Who is it that the wild beasts listen to? These are all questions that he presents to Job. And Job, it says that he cannot even utter an answer to God. He simply just puts his hand over his mouth. Romans 11, 33, 12 through 1. Oh, the depths of the riches and the wisdom and the knowledge of God, how unsearchable his judgments and untraceable his ways. For who has known the mind of the Lord, or who has been his counselor, and who has ever given to God that he should be repaid? For from him and through him and to him are all things. To him be the glory forever. Amen. Therefore, brothers and sisters, in view of God, the mercies of God, I urge you to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true worship. Church, this is what kingdom worship looks like. Either we worship God for who he is, or we worship God for what he has given us. And if it's the latter, then when he takes it away, we will curse him to his face. I know I said it's not an easy pill to swallow, but it is the truth of who God is. And things happen that absolutely shatter our lives, that shatter who we thought we were, shatter who we thought that God was or is. So grieve. Tear your shirt. Shave your head. Present your broken heart to the Lord. Lament in the company of your miserable friends if you must. Oh, church, but don't stop there. Sitting in the dust, picking at your boils. Well, this must be it, right? God was lying to me the whole time. Because look where I am. It is not God that was lying to you, it was Satan. After Job's basically graduate level course on the nature of God, he has a little bit of a coming to Jesus with this whirlwind Lord. And he succeeds. He says, I know, Lord, you can do all things. Things that I cannot understand, and you are too wonderful for me. I heard of you, but now I see you. His eyes were open. He thought he knew. But now he knows. Now he sees. At the end of the book of Job, his health is restored, his fortunes, his family, his standing in the community. And that, again, it is not transactional. It's not that he's like, all right, God, you're right, give it all back to me. No, that's the whole point. That's not how it works, right? But it was God's gift to Job in the end. And sometimes it works out like that. And sometimes it doesn't. But I'm going to tell you this, in the end, it is all restored through Jesus, whether on this side of heaven or not. I'm going to pick up with Job 42:15. And this is kind of after all this. This is, now no women were as beautiful as Job's daughters. No woman as beautiful as Job's daughters could be found in all of the land, and their father granted them an inheritance with their brothers. Job lived 140 years after this and saw his children and their children to the fourth generation. Then Job died full and old of days. In the beginning of this story, Job was a man who was blameless and upright. Y'all, I have known a lot of people who could be classified as blameless and upright, but they were not filled with the love and the Spirit of God. What Satan meant for evil, God used it for good. Job is a changed man. He is a man who has been through the desert and has come out with his faith intact, worshiping the Lord. And their father granted them an inheritance with their brothers. Church, that's craziness. That is havoc. That is frothy fountains. I don't think in our culture we can understand how countercultural, how absolutely radical that was. This man who before all of this, it says he was the greatest man in the East. Now he has double that, and he is going to give it to who? His daughters, equally with his brothers. This is a man who, when he had nothing, presented himself to God, but now that his eyes have been opened to see who God is, he knows that everything he has is not truly his, so he gives it all away equally to his sons and daughters alike. And is that not just how our Father, through Jesus, loves us? He gives it away freely to sons and daughters alike, whether we are worthy or deserving or not. Whether culture thinks we should have it, whether anybody thinks that we should have it, God gives it. Let's stand, church. Man, there are so many Jobs in this book. There's the Job in the beginning when everything's great. There's the Job when everything is torn away. There's the grieving Job, the worshiping Job, the lamenting Job, the restored Job. There is space for all of those Jobs. Wherever we are, there is space for all of us. And wherever we are, we have the opportunity to present our true worship, our bodies, our lives as living sacrifices, whether we're giving it all away or the only thing we have to give is ourselves. And that is our invitation this morning. And so we have some space. If you are a visitor here, at the end of every service, we leave space to respond to God, respond to what he has for us, what he's calling us to do. Whether it's he's calling us to step into something or if he's calling us to give something and lay it down in his feet. And we have members of our church who are trained prayer ministers who are here to pray for you wherever you are. And so if the prayer ministers want to come forward, and if you would like worship for anything this morning, there is space. Worship. I said it. Well, maybe that's where we're at, church. If you want prayer or worship, maybe that's what you need to do is just lay it all and worship God. There's space for that. There's space for us in this morning. Thank you.